Hmm. I've been reading this book, Confessions of a Buddhist Atheist, and it's about this person who, he was born in the northwest of England, but he went and he became a monk, a Buddhist monk, for 10 years. He writes that, I had just turned 21. I had been a Buddhist for less than 2 years, and now I was a shaven-headed, red-robed, celibate renunciate. Although I wrote to my mother regularly, I said nothing about my deepening personal engagement with Buddhism. As far as she knew, I was pursuing a rather eccentric course of academic field of study in a Tibetan refugee settlement. She was glad that I had found something to engage my interest, and relieved that I was no longer just drifting along through Asia. Her main concern was where these studies would lead in terms of me finding a respectable career. She had no inkling at all of what I was planning to do. A couple of days before receiving ordination, I wrote her a long letter explaining the step I was about to take, justifying myself in all the jargon of a Buddhist doctrine, which I guiltily knew would mean little, if anything, to her, but by the time she received the letter, I was already in robes. On hearing the news, she said, "My heart sank to my feet." So someone, I mean, it's amazing to me that someone younger than me from, my country and culture just got up and went to Asia and decided to just become a monk. And it's sort of, I guess, that passage makes it seem sort of unsettling, because he just sort of, it's like he went into a cult or something, and his culture from before and his family just sort of disappear off into the background and no longer seem to present any meaning to him. From what I gather, for the first 4 years of being a monk, he just sort of he did lots of reading, and he also meditated constantly on the idea that he was like an empty sort of vessel and everything's sort of connected. But he is an empty vessel, it's sort of this rigid idea of just sitting and thinking about that set idea, and that everything has to be connected, and so rebirth and everything have to exist within that format. And so then he finds it too rigid and so forth, and so he moves to a different monastery, and for 3 years meditates under a different theory that you should meditate on the question, what is this? And the question doesn't matter, really, it seems. The question could be anything, really. It's just to sort of get a more questioning, curious mindset, where you sort of don't really know what anything is, just questioning, and not rigidly thinking you know the answer. But it's sort of dauntingly long to think about one idea or one theory for years on end. I mean, the idea that he spent 4 years meditating on the idea that he was an empty vessel before deciding he wanted to change what he meditated on and move. It took him 4 years to decide, to do that and then decide to move. And then it was for 3 years of meditating on the idea of these questions. It's a long time. I don't know that I can imagine waking up every day, walking around for an hour, sitting down, and then for 3 or 4 hours every day thinking the same exact thought that I thought the day before, and then the days after. Just every day sitting down and thinking for several hours, what is this? What is this? What is this? Just for years on end. It strikes me that there's no goal point with that. There's no point at which you've achieved a curious mindset and then you go off and use that mindset to do something or anything. There's just doing that forever. And some people will be in that monastery their whole life. and have then just used their whole life on just one idea over and over again, just thinking that one idea, the idea that's been taught to them from whoever's running the monastery. I'm used to thinking of Buddhist monks as sort of really wise sorts of people who have, devoted their whole life to sort of meditating and deepening their inner being. But if they're just thinking about the same exact thought every single day, then they're not deepening it and progressing it. They're just maintaining one status for a very long time. And that, I don't know, that just doesn't seem very wise to me at this point. There's a paragraph on page 82 that caught my eye this morning, from when he decided to stop being a monk, but he decided to still travel monasteries. So he's still just going around visiting monasteries. And it says, we took a bus to a nearby monastery of one of the last Tang Dynasty Chan monasters. Young men was known for his pithy one-word Zen. When asked what is the highest teaching of Buddha, he replied, an appropriate statement. On another occasion, he answered, cake. And so this particular guy, I guess he's decided to just answer with just random words or whatever. And it's just like, oh, who even knows the answer? Just give any answer, whatever. Which seems like a funny idea when you read it as just a paragraph and you just say, oh, that's a nice theory, or that's a nice idea. But then what you have to understand behind that, I think, is that he is a master. He is described as a master, and this is something he's well known for. So that's not just a funny little theory. That's probably something he did for years, is sit there and rile off one-word answers that make no sense. He probably did that for years on end. And it strikes me that that's such a simplistic idea. Just such a simple theory. The idea of just replying with random answers. But he probably devoted huge amounts of time to this simple idea. Which, off the cuff, made me think about abstract art and how some artists devote, decades of their life to what seem simple ideas, like Jackson Pollock dripped paint, and Bridget Riley did stripes, and Cy Twombly does handwriting, and great big scribbles of handwriting, and these are quite simple ideas, but they're not just simple ideas or theories, they're the whole of their career, basically. That's the whole of their career, over and over again, doing the same thought or same theory, which in some manners seems kind of absurd. Just, I don't know, I mean, wasn't there someone who once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results? I don't know, it's a bit like that. You're just sitting down and meditating on the same idea every day and thinking you're going to get wiser one day from it, or painting the same thing every day and thinking one day it's going to transform ideas or something. It's in some manner it seems like an absurdity. It seems insane. It seems, I don't know, it's a bit radical to just do the same thing every single day, especially if it's a really simplistic idea. It's spending every single day doing this idea seems really I don't know, it's impressively absurd. I suppose that if the idea wasn't a simple idea and was a great big theory, that wouldn't necessarily make it better. Like if you're, I don't know, I don't know, I mean, it does. I was just thinking, you're not superior if your idea is more detailed. you're still both humans and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess I've come to the conclusion from this that I more prefer artists like Gerhard Richter and Armin Merschman, who do realism and abstract and sort of bounce between the two and build higher ideas in that manner. But that's not really much of a conclusion, because I already knew I liked those artists, and I don't know what these ideas, I'm just saying them as I think them, basically. I mean, I don't know what that conclusion has to do with Buddhism. I mean, what am I saying? Am I saying take some ideas from Buddhism and then just bounce them back into real life and use them, rather than every day trying to make yourself a more curious, thoughtful person, or trying to make yourself into a more focused person and then just never using it? You should go out and use those ideas, I guess, instead of meditating on them for 10 hours every day and then just not using them. You should go out and use them. I don't know where this is going. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts I had. I guess to me, I mean, it's good to spend some time thinking about small ideas and who you are and what you are and these things. It'd be good to spend some time doing that, but it's also good to sometimes put those things into practice and do things and do bigger ideas. I think you've got to me, there's got to be a compromise in doing both. Not a devotion to just one of those things. To become a balanced human being, I guess. I suppose there's something to be said for stability and routine, but being a Buddhist monk isn't just stability and routine, it's also denial. You know, it mentions being celibate. It's not just doing the same thing, it's not doing the other things. Anyway, that was the first half of the book where he was a monk, and in the second half is when he goes back to being a layman, and there were some quite interesting ideas and things in the first half of the book, which is what I've read so far, like the conflicting ideas that happen in Buddhism and stuff like that, that maybe I didn't realise mattered as much, but I guess because he went he became a monk, he was so far into Buddhism that these little things did start to matter, and the differences between the different practices of Buddhism do conflict a bit.